Winter dawn, quite dark, early morning by the estuary, a time to reflect a little bit on the difference between good story and bad story. I'm not fond of dichotomies, but I think it could help if we think in this way. So you know what it's like when you hear a good story. It stays with you. As a child, you want to hear it again. You can't get enough of it. There's something in the pattern, in the structure, that makes you feel real. We tell them again and pass them on. That's why some story survives for 1,000 years, or 2, or 10. The hero falls in a hole, gets out, or starts in a hole, gets out. Rags to riches, slaying devils and dragons, or leaders of the evil empire, or crazed wizards, or especially giants. Big people who stomp and stamp and eat all the food first, unless you win through cleverness, through words and story. And yet today, story is often characterized by antonyms. Children are chided for telling tales. Myth is taken to be synonymous for a lie. A story itself is assumed to be a fabrication, a fiction, not containing elements of truth. Imagination is needed for story, and yet someone might be told, as a put-down, you're imagining things. On the other hand, a sports star or an actor might be called a legend. And when something wonderful happens, a romance or a splendid holiday, we might say it was just like a fairy tale. The modern era of rationality seems to prefer data and blueprint, certainty and mission statement. All good story, by contrast, is built on moments and events of transformation. Good story also contains an outrageous suggestion. We're lucky to be here at this very moment, even with all the crises. So despite the cultural ubiquity of story, in a technocratic context it can appear unhelpful, even the opposite of a truth. In contemporary times, story is often assumed to misinform. You could say a bad story is simply content with which the listener disagrees, but bad story is even simpler. It's something that does not engage the audience. Bad story is often exposition heavy. It deploys a tell mode, a transfer from one person to another, from an organisation to another, without seeking or allowing amendment. Bad story commonly centres on offering solutions fixed in advance, pre-cooked, as the work's already been done. It's thus all about us, the organisation or ourselves, and not about you, the audience or reader or viewer. So here's a simple typology based on the acronym TACT, T-A-C-T. Tell, ask, co-produce, transform. All story is created by a teller. I mean, we talk about storytelling after all, and by the listener, by writers and readers, by filmmakers and viewers. It's the connection with the audience that matters most. So T for tell, A for act, C for co-produce, T is for transform. So good stories and good story is used to create empathy, hope, togetherness, the promise of better things in future. Maya Angelou wrote, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unlike." Let's say something then about vulnerability. The audience is taken to be only in recipient mode. Bad story assumes a form of perfection is possible and thus admits neither vulnerability or space for alteration. Everyone, every organisation is flawed and vulnerable in some way. So how did they overcome those adversities and difficulties? That's something we'd like to know. Bad story simply seeks to persuade. Bad storytellers do not admit uncertainty, for they have worked so hard to create perfection. Nothing needs to be added. They certainly don't want to be seen as vulnerable. We tried this, it went wrong, then we did this instead. We fell in a hole, we got out of the hole. Oh yes, we think. That's like my whole week, my whole day, my whole year. So how can story help organisations? Organisations often find themselves facing their own crises, sometimes existential. A competitor arrives unannounced in the market, a policy changes, key staff leave, energy costs spiral, a media event hits the news, the pandemic dramatically cuts income. Someone says new rules and principles have to be adopted, and yet no one has any experience to draw upon. We don't have a clue. You're in a tight spot, so what now? Organisations have their own tried and tested ways of talking about themselves. Foundation myths, measures of success, mission statements, brand architecture, and tales of enemy competitors. Yet these are not stories. An organisation creates worthy websites and publishes reports full of explanation and exposition. It seeks to communicate information, yet these inspire no heroic journeys. We don't want to hear the company's origin story, nor a list of their own self-defined successes. Story should not explain, it should serve to inspire. Exposition, it's the enemy of story. If you find yourself writing explanations, then cut them out. Audience skip those bits, or they just fall asleep. Leave it out. It changes pace, stops the forward movement of the characters and their story. But for the organisation, this often feels risky, especially opening up to the knowledge and views of their audience and of consumers. When the toy company Lego makes the chance discovery of a somewhat shy group of customers called adult fans of Lego, it listens and engages, gives them status as creators, and dramatically increases sales. When NASA launches a worldwide citizen science platform, it finds that problems previously taking 5 years to solve are now solved in 6 months. But it doesn't persuade all its own staff. Half vigorously oppose the involvement of these external amateurs. They don't like this new story. So an organisation succeeds when it tells story not about itself, but how it is helping people make the world a better place. Emotions change behaviours and mindsets. Data doesn't. The organisation talks about how it's improving lives. The listener recognises this and turns towards the organisation. Any organisation can tell a good story. Most don't. They think everyone cares about their business, but they don't. Really, nobody cares. The public is interested in what you can do for them. They say, tell me something good. A good story. So good story can lead to tipping points and phase transitions, non-linearities, where transformations can be sudden, as sudden as those we experience in life. Story is a world full of these kinds of non-linear dynamics. Someone can be both lucky and unlucky in story. A butterfly flaps its wings and whole systems change. A challenge then. Can we create stories so vivid, so astounding, and so colourful that they will be remembered for 1,000 years? And in the immediate future, can we speed climate and nature recovery by doing this? Story says, go through the door. In bad story, there's no co-production and connection. Good story, by contrast, is regenerative.